and I'm still trying to work out, and so a lot of other people, what exactly have we done? We've taken a static image and we've given it temporality, which one would imagine in some senses is not the thing you should do. But there again, what is Rembrandt doing? He's making a narrative which represents a single minute second of a time in his own particular narrative, so he's already implying the notions of temporality. This is meant to be a visual phenomenon, and we've given it a soundtrack. What exactly are we doing there? What exactly is the notions of... We were talking yesterday about Bernini, about the multimedia artist. Bernini would have been absolutely extraordinary if he'd also had electricity. Wouldn't Rembrandt also be amazing? Because I'm sure he would be a filmmaker if he was alive now. A very simple thing to say, because they say that about Shakespeare, they say it about everybody, of course, that these guys would certainly have used the technology, as indeed he did, of his age and his time. So in a curious way, we have sort of done it for him. But I think that peculiar interface between painting hitting right up against the cinema language, which had been predicated, I'm sure you've all seen Godard's Passion, where he did a sort of filmic essay about it, but by no means did he get, in some sense, to the nitty-gritty and the grips with the interchange of the two languages. A lot of people, of course, have thought what we've done is extremely vulgar, it's very kitsch. Okay, they're welcome to that opinion. I think in a curious way that Rembrandt was a Hollywood painter anyway, so maybe there are certain justifications, and I wouldn't completely refute. I think part of their reaction is related to notions, you know, of high art and public art, which I think we should gradually jump over, and kitsch, after all, is a very valid approach to notions of certain image making, which I think is perfectly legitimate. But I'm still not quite certain, and I know that art historians are out, madly, madly writing their theses about it, and really considering what we have done. Some people think we have overreached completely and created a situation where painting in a curious way can never be the same again. That sounds like a grand statement. But you can see the notions of a post-digital technology in an information age, there's certain sorts of dangerous territory we've now moved in. As evidence of that, apart from our extremely eminent guest here, Wolfgang, who came to see it, we also had the director of the Prado in Madrid, who's invited me to do something similar to Velázquez Las Meninas. We have the head of the Uffizi in Florence, who offered me a Raphael and a Della Francesca. We have had the director of the Louvre, who wants, and I've always wanted to tackle Veronese's The Marriage of Cana. It hasn't got 34 people in it, it's got 68 people in it. And my great ambition, and I thought this was really, really crazy, was to make a version, again, reread, different agendas, but still basically using the same vocabulary, of Michelangelo's Last Judgment in the Vatican. Now that seems like an extraordinary dream. But think about morphic resonances in the zeitgeist. There is now in Italy a certain sort of cultural panic. Their tourist figures are going down. In the last 3 years, less and less people are visiting all the museum situations. And they've found by demographics that the people who aren't going anymore to Italian museums are not foreigners, but Italians. So there's now been instigated a huge program, for example, in Venice, which has a 50-year span, full of politicians, funders, financiers, bankers, architects, artists, to try and do something about their situation. I have just been appointed as their artistic curator to revitalize the notion of a consideration of this huge European heritage, to be able to bring it in and make it relevant to things today. And one of the emissaries, and I met him in front of the Night Watch, I think 2 days before the whole thing finished, was the present Pope's cultural attaché. And he said, don't be too dispirited about the possibility of coming to the Vatican and maybe even doing the Sistine Chapel. I finish. Any questions? I'm so glad you went to see it before, because in a way your excellent prologue opened up all sorts of possible minds. So thank you all for that.
No, I thank you. Actually, let me, what we did in between the showings, we were allowed as an audience to really go to the painting back and then look at it again. And we discovered so many things we had not seen before because of the story. And exactly the feeling, I had exactly this feeling. How will they ever show old art again, especially such scenes, without remembering what you did to them? So in the future, I think that is how, and I think it's great that you bring this neutral thing, that not cinema can only help this art, the painting, but the painting also helps cinema to get its thing. To see cinema has started actually in the Baroque time. Yes, that is, looks very convincing and goes way. Also, but we have to discuss this, because one of your greatest attack was always against using images just for storytelling, in the service of. Nothing wrong with storytelling, but not just as other art forms, other things to help out instead of doing your story yourself, in some way. And these paintings, they are a story on one hand, no question, but on the other hand, because they are, so fixed, focused. That's a right word. So fixed but focused is a painter in that. So you can learn that focus and temporality, storytelling, are not in any way oppositions. So in fact, it should be like that. It should be like that you can stop any moment and interrupt the temporality to look at something very intensively, and this encourages you not to stay there, but to go on with the story. But not as we have in many so-called films, nicht? The story has to go on, which push it, never stop. Nicht? Or it's an art film and nobody wants to see it anymore. Also here I think nicht, there is a great lesson for cinema today. So nicht, these paintings repay us actually what we do for them in order to bring them in our times, but really give us a horizon we have not had before. And that I think you did wonderfully. Made us proud.
Well, as you can imagine, exciting enterprise, and you can see maybe where it's going to land. The investigation and the association inevitably needs to be explored and explored. And I think the exploration can be very exciting.
I find it extremely impressive, and I was reminded of some pages by Eisenstein, where he talks, for example, of the Greco as the inventor of the newsreel, and he reads into very classical paintings, very important lessons for the invention of his cinematic language. And I think there's a very interesting way in which this work might relate to those passages in Eisenstein.
Isn't it funny? We always keep going back to Eisenstein. Over and over again. The last 3 or 4 days in class, his name has cropped up certainly every 20 minutes. He's the one filmmaker, I'm sure, without embarrassment, that we can easily put up there with Shakespeare and Beethoven, and I don't think you can do that with any other filmmakers. His sense of what he was doing, his ability to synthesize and understand the medium he was essentially creating was really extraordinary. Yeah.
In what ways are some of these things going to be translated into the film of Night Watching?
The film, of course, has other concerns. It has to, I suppose, appeal, how shall I say this without condescension, to a Californian audience. There will be all those things that you'd expect of the film. We'll certainly try, probably, to make this as an integral set piece within the film itself. And a lot of the red lines that we're pulling about notions of drama, about Baroque theatre, about Baroque painting, about narrativity in various ways will all be related back to this phenomenon. That wouldn't have been the case before we did this, because when I stood here a year ago, we hadn't even made this, so this has happened in the intervening time. But it certainly made me rethink of how we can make it apposite to the film experience.